I'm going to go ahead and started. Thank you, Eileen, for hitting the record button. All right, so welcome again, everyone, to Enhancing Quality of Care with Peer-Supported Advanced Directive Planning. My name is Daniela Labate-Cavelli. I'm from NIAPRS, and I'm here to welcome you today. So if we could just go into the next slide. I have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of with you today. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to find the slides and the recording on the NIAPRS website within a couple days at www.niaprs.org. So we are able to offer one CE today for social workers. That's both LM and LCSWs, CPRPs, and LMHCs. In order to receive that CE, we ask that you be logged into the room with us and not just dialed in on the phone, and stay the entire session, as well as complete the evaluation that'll be sent to your email within 24 hours of today's webinar, and complete and return that evaluation within 48 hours, indicating which CE you're looking for. We also have some time, have some time at the end set aside for questions and answers. So I see folks are already using the chat box, which is great. We always love to see who's in the room with us. We hope that you'll continue to use that chat box to communicate with our presenters today, and chat in your questions and comments, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn us over to Larry Hochwald, who is part of our collective staff. He'll introduce himself and he'll introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Daniela. So I am Larry Hochwald. I am the team leader of the NIAPRS Collective, and I am also the New York City and Long Island trainer for the NIAPRS Collective, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you. We have a lot of great stuff here today, and at the end we'll talk about some upcoming stuff that we have. So today we have with us Matthew Federici. He is the Executive Director of the Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery. Very happy to have Matt here today. I've been fortunate enough, among other things I've gotten to see Matt do and participate in. I got to see him talk about advanced directives before today's meeting, so I'm very happy that he was able to join us for this webinar. And we also have Colleen Sheehan. Now, when I met Colleen, she was the NIAPRS trainer for the middle of the state in the Hudson River region. She's since become, among other things, an independent consultant. She's doing training, and she's very graciously joined us today. And they will fill you in with, when they start speaking, anything else they want to let you know about them. So with that, I apologize. I know I'm not where I usually do these webinars, and it doesn't look so good, but I'm glad I could be here with everybody. So I am going to turn it over first to Matt, and you guys, you're in for a treat. So everybody enjoy this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, Daniela, for your support. Thank you to NIAPRS Collective, and want to share a little bit about just why I'm doing this, and also invite Colleen. Colleen will just share a little bit about why this topic's important to us, you know. And so interestingly, this is a great opportunity. I thank everyone for being here to work with NIAPRS, because very early on in my career, really one of my passion projects and trainings that I got involved in at an organization was on this topic, psychiatric rehabilitation. And it was at the NIAPRS conference, and psychiatric advanced directives were one of my prime passions. It kind of led to my passion with the Wellness Recovery Action Plan too, which I'll talk a little bit today. And I just want to share that at the heart of all of that is because I am first and foremost informed by my own experience in the journey of recovery, and one of the opportunities that I had is both from my own experience and also as a supporter to my older brother, who went through the state hospital system. And I learned a lot from that experience. One of those things I learned was that I was very privileged in that my experience, I had a very active advocacy family, and in the absence of a legal document like a psychiatric advance directive, during a critical time of which my competency was really called in question and I was being hospitalized, My family and friends honored every wish that I had, involved me through the whole process. So I had what we're going to talk about later on today is very active healthcare agents on my behalf, in absence of a thing like we're talking about today. And as I move forward to become a psych rehab practitioner, a master's in rehabilitation counseling, working for employment programs in the public mental health centers, doing therapy, etc., I realized that that this was a great privilege that I had to have a strong support system. And in absence of, for many people, having that, Psychiatric Advance Directive was, for me, a very important process and document to make sure that people's voice and choice is heard, their dignity is honored, very much like I felt mine was in that journey. And so this is why it's a big passion to me. For me, is to see that not everyone has that opportunity, but we can make sure that they do. We can make every effort, and until this topic, psychiatric advance directives, are supported more prevalently throughout our system, I don't think we can claim that we've made much transformation or have a recovery-oriented system. So that's a little bit about me and my passion, why I'm here today. I'd love for you to get to meet Colleen a little bit and hear a little bit from Colleen about why she's joining me on this presentation today.
Hi, I'm Colleen Sheehan. Many of you may recognize me. I worked with the collective for over 15 years. And my passion has been the idea of when I was in California, I didn't have a mental health issue, and I moved to New York, and I was sad, and I had a mental health issue and got put on medications, and I didn't really get much explanation or choice. So I became an advocate, and I really have spent my time working to help everyone understand, all levels of education, all cultures, that mental health is not dependent upon your genes alone. That a lot of it is situational. And I think one of the best things that came out of COVID is now people know that situations cause mental health issues. And now we need to get back on the road to recovery. And I think this is an opportune time to become more empowered in our wellness than we've ever been before, and to look to our peers and lift them up, and to just start using these documents and change the world.
Thank you, Colleen. And so we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey about what the topic is today, but hopefully you'll hear a little bit about our experiences with them as well. As we're going to be talking today, not only are Psychiatric Advance Directive, advanced planning, really important, but really combining that with the lived experience of peer support is really a key aspect of what we're talking about today. A little different than what you can find out there on YouTube. There's a lot of resources on psychiatric advance directives, but not too many that really emphasize the role and the importance that peers can play and our experiences can play in the engagement and the support. With that said, here's kind of a little bit more about what we are doing today. We are going to explore the values, the benefits, and applications of peer-supported mental health advance directives, also referred to as psychiatric advance directives. This webinar is a collaboration that started in our work here with PMHCA, Peer Coalition, Youth Move, and Doors to Wellbeing, which is the Copeland Center's National Technical Assistance Center grant. And we've extended here where we're working with NIAPRS Collaborative as well. So this collaboration is further expanding with peer organizations and peer ally organizations. So through attending this session, participants will describe the value of psychiatric advance directives to increase quality of care. So you'll leave with some great talking points about why this is critical to quality of care. Want you to leave knowing how peer specialists or peer supporters or peer bridgers can support effective implementation of psychiatric advance directives, and apply key steps to guide agency policy and procedure to implement peer-supported psychiatric advanced directives. And then we also hope you leave with being able to describe how RAP complements psychiatric advanced directives. So kind of a tall order for really a brief period of time. So getting started, let's start off with some basic definitions of what we're talking about here. I'm going to pass it on to Colleen to share a little bit about when we're talking about advanced directives and psychiatric advanced directives, what we're referring to.
All right, well, sometimes you just have to read stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about advanced directives, overview, because it started out as physical advanced directives. And as the recovery movement moved forward, psychiatric advanced directives became also a relevant thing. So an advanced directive gives the person's wishes in the event that she or he is incapacitated or unable to express wishes for health care and treatment. Under federal law, any facility receiving Medicare or Medicaid reimbursements is required to use advanced directives. Individuals with a physical and or mental health condition is covered under this mandate. So implementing advanced directives across the board is something that we are doing advocacy around. But specifically, we're interested in psychiatric advanced directives because psychiatric advanced directives are about how we live our lives. We're going to live through this. It's going to be, how are we going to live our life after we have a psychiatric crisis? Whereas physical advanced directives tend to be a lot more focused on end of life stuff. So it's like, we're going to use this and then it's going to be over. So they're a little different. So you want to set your mindset. A psychiatric mental health advanced directive is a legal rights document that allows a person to make preferences regarding mental health treatment, known in the event that the person is determined to not to be able to make decisions about their treatment and or determined incapacitated based on state laws. In effect, the person is giving or withholding consent to treatment in advance of when treatment is needed. So since we've been through this treatment, we're able to say we want it or we don't want it and why. We're going to get a little bit more into that as we go down the slides. So here's Matt.
Thanks, Colleen. And yeah, I want to emphasize, I put in the chat box that the nrcpad.org, the National Registry of Psychiatric Advanced Directives website link, where you can find out the specifics about the law regarding this in your state from that directory. So we won't get into each different state. However, I want to emphasize that regardless of what state you're in, under federal law, any facility receiving Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement is required to use advanced directives. So I think that's a really powerful and important statement, particularly as peer specialists have moved into Medicaid reimbursable services as well. That if we put the pieces together and we really pay attention here, we can see that there isn't a onus on all of us working within the mental health system to be talking about, bringing up, and supporting that. We're going to talk a little bit about some simple ingredients to that moving forward. But let's say, regardless of it being a legal document, one of the things I really want us to be compelled to, both personally and professionally, is that mental health advanced directives are a mechanism for coordination of care. I am the most central source of my medical history. And no matter how much we built in electronic health records and all these systems that are trying to help improve coordination, they'll never be able to put together my story and my needs together like I can in a document like a mental health advanced directive. And again, I encourage and I look at mine as really about all health advanced directives, including my psychiatric treatment as well. If I can appeal to people to think about this as not something for people with mental illnesses or a history of mental illnesses, but for all of us. I recently was supporting somebody who went to the ER, the emergency room, and they are now having more people trained in how to kind of real quick pathologize behaviors they're seeing at every place you can imagine, in schools, in the community, and in the ER systems. And so now we have more people who are kind of looking at certain behaviors and statements that people were making and saying, oh, I think that's anxiety. Oh, I think that's bipolar. And so the reason why I want to share this story was this person whom I was supporting, we found out later was having a stroke. But one of the attendees said they got this training in mental health and they were asking about anxiety and whether you're on anxiety medications. And the question was, why are you asking all these questions about this? And they said, well, you look really nervous and anxious, your hand's shaking a little bit. And turned out all of those things were actually related to the stroke. But what I noticed there was an opportunity where this could have very easily turned into a discharge with anti-anxiety medications. And the person I was supporting actually very against taking those medications. They'd like to do self-management approaches to anxiety and these types of things before they would go to a medication that potentially could be addictive, right? This is why I just want to press upon us that it really behooves many of us to think about what kind of care, even if we haven't received this type of care, if you found yourself in a situation, what are your preferences? Would you want to be put on an antipsychotic? How would you want to be handled in a mental health crisis? Mental health crises can arise or be perceived as arising for us for a lot of reasons, right? Also, these documents and really getting behind this is an opportunity for feedback to the system, right? So the more and more we start to see people submitting and sharing advanced directives with the system, we can actually see trends in our programs where, look, 90% of the people in these plans are saying they don't want this treatment or they don't want this done. Maybe we could put this into some program changes because it sounds like majority of people don't like this. That's the kind of trend that we don't actually get good feedback on right now. It's also a tool for holistic health, right? So it brings together dimensions of my life because a part of that advanced planning has to do with who's taking care of my kids, what's going to happen with my bills, right? A big thing that's come up in our peer groups around this together as we're sharing was that there are people who have actually had to pay for a semester of college and because they went in for care and there was no coordination or document around this, no one contacted the school for them, and they didn't even get that education at college, right? And so there's a lot of gaps like that that can be filled when we put together these plans, take personal responsibility to put agents into place around it. So there are three types, you can say there are three types of advanced directives you can do. One is a declaration, which is, this is where you are stating your specific preferences, needs, and in writing, right? So you may also know this is like a living will, right? And this is where it's based on the document that you write out. There's also the power of attorney or agent's approach. And you can have, you might be at a place where you say, you know what, I really want to empower this person whom I trust in my life, but I'm not quite sure how to start with my particular preferences yet. So you can get started by, in many states, just appointing that person so that there is some buffer between strangers that are providing treatment to you and your personal preference. You could put an agent in place right away and say, I want this person to be consulted. You could do a combination, which is what I like to do, where I have people designated and instructions for them with parameters around what they can make decisions for me and what are absolutely no-goes. Just don't make this decision for me. In New York, you can you'll look up healthcare agents and proxies around this. So written instructions, agents, or a combination. We want you to take a look in the chat box. Colleen's going to share about her experience with this. And in the chat box, we can think about what would be the good fit for you. What would you have a leaning towards? And Colleen, could you share a little bit about what you decided in this arena?
So real quickly, I just wanted to say, be careful assigning an agent, because if you sign your peer specialist, they may not be able to serve as your agent because they're in a paid position. So you want to be careful of that. And you want to always ask the person if they'll do it, because if you just put somebody down and then the hospital contacts them and they don't want to do it, they'll just say no, and then you're in the same position. You don't have anybody to stand up for you. On mine, I do not have a signed agent. I'm kind of estranged from my immediately family. My parents are dead. So I just put in here, I have a history of mental, emotional, and physical trauma, so they understand why. And then that I need to discuss things. I can't, if I make a decision in the moment, it might be something I'm going to regret. So I need to really understand things and discuss things. And that's going to be the most important thing for me, help me clarify my treatment. So that's what I have for my agent.
Thanks, Colleen. So I just invited you to share in the chat what might be your starting point. What would be a good fit for you? Would you want to do instruction, all instruction, agent-driven, or a combination of both? It'd be great if you could share that. Great. I see we have someone shared declarations. Great. Declarations combination. Yep. Combo. All right. Lots of combos, and that's what I prefer. However, there's really good reasons why you might do one or the other. Declarations, combinations, yes. And again, I would encourage you to know, depending what state you're coming from, you want to look that resource up, find out how that is supported legally. But I would say that if only declarations are legally enforced, that it's still a good idea, as Colleen was sharing, to have a reliable agent or supporter, because you can have those declarations written out, but you need to make sure it gets to the right people, right? So you can also have it where your law in your state might just enforce the agent's involvement, but your agent, if they're a good agent, could take your instructions and follow them for you. Great, thank you for participating and sharing in that. So also mental health advanced directives, is also a way that increases our choice and voice. So we know that self-direction, having choice, having voice, look, it is a human right. It is a matter of civil rights as well. But we also know that the research in recovery and rehabilitation supports that when people have choice and voice in the process of their care, they do better, right? It's a way to increase community safety. A lot of times bad decisions are made for people because they just don't know, and everyone is in a crisis in that moment. And we can support our community to know the best way to support us in those moments by coordinating and putting these documents together. It is especially important for cultural competency. There are a lot of things that can make a situation escalate or de-escalate that really pertain to our cultural differences. The way we're talked to, the language that's used in those moments, and also the responses, right? The crisis responses that are there. We know that there are different stakes at hand when police are engaged and involved in a crisis moment. Well, what if we can have some documents that involve the right peer supporters, people that we know that can be called in. So instead of a crisis response team calling the police in where somebody's life could be really jeopardized, we know that that happens. This is a great tool to avoid those situations, right? It also increases coordination across the system. It can reduce hospitalizations, and as I'm really alluding to here, criminal justice interactions that we don't need to have happen if we have better choice and voice in the situation, as well as homelessness. People have lost their homes in crises where there was no coordination with the public sector around maintaining the housing situation. as well.
So someone asked if psychiatric advance directive could avoid a police interaction. In New York State and Ulster County, we have a mental health, Ulster County mental health response team. So I have that in my advance directive. So depending who might be calling, I do have that in there as a resource, and I do have the reason that I have had interactions with the police in the past that have caused me trauma, and so that can make the situation worse. So if you can call the Ulster County Mental Health Team, that would be great.
Thanks, Colleen. I can give one pointed example. I recall early on when we were implementing the certified peer specialist and peer specialist in the field, working alongside other professionals, that when we did a follow-up focus group to that, one of the outcomes was that now this wasn't written in the document, but it was an advanced plan in place. And that was a person built a trusting relationship with an African-American peer specialist. And when things escalated, it became a thing where word got around, and that peer specialist was called in. And the case managers at that time said that they reduced the number of times police got involved by 70%, simply because they had this diversion, and not only a diversion, but they had a supporter who the person chose, who they had trust with, that could bring it in and really de-escalate a situation that would have gone much worse. And so this is the type of thing of how a pad can use. Another benefit of that is when the pads indicate agents, and even if the police are involved, and that police gets that information and says, you know what, we'd rather call this agent or family member here, we can see there's a medical issue. So overall, you know, mental health or psychiatric advance directives are really at the heart of systems transformation. They will help quality improvement. It is recovery focused. It will be cost effective because we won't be doing harmful interventions that could have otherwise been avoided that we didn't know about. Improve coordinated care, improve safety, improve cultural responsiveness. It is all about being person-centered, strengthens choice, and self-direction. So all these things that are really popular buzzwords within rehab and recovery are actually brought into fruition when we have these plans in place. So let's talk a little bit at the time we have about what are some of the decisions, the key things that we want to talk about. And one of the things I would like to impart with people today is that when you put these together and you state your directions and your instructions, it is really going to be strengthening to include the reasons why. And if you can include medical reasons, that is going to take a much stronger weight. It's going to change the whole conversation for the doctors when they see you don't want antipsychotics because you have allergic reactions to them. That puts a whole different liability on the doctor than if you just say, I don't want them. So Colleen, I'll just invite you to share a little bit about some of the choices and that you've made and maybe why.
Yeah, I recently started exhibiting symptoms of a hereditary motor sensory neuropathy. It affects my arms and my legs. So I have to be really careful what drugs I take, what dosages, and I continue and I repeat it over and over in my advance directive. Give me this drug, it doesn't activate my nervous system. Don't give me that drug, it has activated my nervous system. So that's an example of what Matt was talking about. And with certain drugs cause more tremors. They can then they really give me a lot of anxiety and fear when I start getting more tremors because I think I'm going to lose more function faster. So it's like, okay, don't do that. We want to keep everything. We don't want to escalate things. So, and another thing that I put in there, like if there's an escalation, one thing that I figured out with my daughter when she was 6, we had a little spat. I said, why don't you tell me what I could do to help you? And she said, went in her room, thought about it for 20 minutes, came out, 6 years old. She said, you know, Mom, when I cry, I can't stop. But if you gave me a bottle of water, when I drink the water, I would have to control my tears to drink the water. So for the rest of her life, we will forever stop and get bottles of water when we start escalating. And it's so empowering because she knows that was her wish when she was 6. And it's still to this day being honored. And it works really well for me. So I put it in here. I put in my psychiatric advanced directive. Things start getting out of control, everybody gets a bottle of water. So, so it gives you insights into yourself. And so, if someone threatens to call the police, you know that you wrote in here, you want the Ulster County mental health team to be called. So, you got that number on your card, you take it out and you give it to the person. No, don't call the police, call these guys, they're experts. Everybody's going to feel better. So those are just a couple examples. We're running short on time. So if you have any questions, you can always contact Larry and he'll let you know. I think I have the same phone number I always had.
Thanks, Colleen. So again, particularly related to the whole conversation around police interactions, we can also provide in these documents information about preferences for emergency treatment. So ways to reduce or avoid emergency treatment. So really putting things in here about what may calm a situation down or what may make things worse. And we can also include permissions for notification and release of information to third parties about services, right? And this can be really critical in terms of there are certain family members that you might really want involved and some you don't. And that can be for very good reasons. Again, sometimes there is trauma related. Well, I shouldn't say sometimes. Most of the time, there's trauma related issues that show up for us in our mental health, and they can be related to family members, right? And so it can be really important to talk about who you do and don't want involved as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the Wellness Recovery Action Plan and Psychiatric Advanced Directives. They are a complement to each other. And RAP is a complement, but it is not a replacement for psychiatric advanced directives. They are kind of in two different domains, right? They complement each other. They together can create a continuum of self-direction. So, when I'm outside of that place, which is beyond just a crisis for me, it is in a medical situation that is really determined by a medical system that I am incompetent, and now I need this document to kick in. It is a legal process. It is specifically about treatment, and it is specifically for my treatment provider and my supporters to communicate with them about my medical needs. Outside of that, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan is a action planning process that is not only something I can put into documents, but it's also a way I live my life. It's a way I action plan through all of those challenges. So in many regards, I feel like I'm not going to need my Psychiatric Advanced Directive like I needed it maybe 30 years ago because I have a Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And so I'm way ahead of action plans and getting supporters to bring into my life when things are early signs or when things are breaking down. And even I can create a crisis plan in my life that has nothing to do with going into a psychiatric hospital or a hospital at all, right? So, really having a Wellness Recovery Action Plan through the evidence-based peer group practices available for people. One of the things we talk about in RAP is a post-crisis plan. So this is like after the crisis, and it can come in terms of the transition plan after that Psychiatric Advanced Directive was engaged in. So one of the things I want to do in my post-crisis plan when I'm out of the hospital is I want to revisit my Psychiatric Advanced Directive, and I want to revisit my RAP plan. How did I get there? What went well? How did that plan work? Etc. And as Yvonne added, being able to develop and work on a RAP plan will help you identify what you may want to put into a Psychiatric Advanced Directive and prepare you before you go, say, meet with a legal consult, right, before you put together that Psychiatric Advanced Directive.
I just wanted to mention real quick that our Rose houses that are peer run crisis centers available in New York State and in many other states. And I put down that I want to go to the hospital. I want to go to an alternative place. I named Rose House. I put the phone number in here and I put down the reasons why, because they use self-help, they're peer run, they use intentional peer support. This is what I respond better to. The hospital and power, not so much. So really have an opportunity to be authentic in these directives. And I would just encourage you to take a look at it and try it. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thank you. So again, Mental Health Advanced Directive or Psychiatric Advanced Directive is a way to prepare in advance of a crisis, right? No one wants to go to the hospital, especially not being able to make decisions there and not having a personal support, right? But it can happen. This is a recovery tool through that moment where you have been declared by a physician or a court process that you are not able to make decisions about your health care. If you have this in place, at that moment, it becomes activated. And so your voice isn't lost. Your voice was prepared in advance. That's one of the great things about this. Again, it's a compliment, but it's not a wrap. The Psychiatric Advanced Directive audience is the medical professional, and it is about a legal document about how you want your healthcare treatment to go. The Wellness Recovery Action Plan is a much larger, holistic process. It is not. It doesn't necessarily even have to be involving the treatment. It is for you and your supporters in your everyday life. So, in the time we have, we want to talk about peers and psychiatric advance directives. Psychiatric advance directives in many states have been on the books, have been talked about for a number of years. I can go back over 20 years ago when I was talking about doing this, working at different agencies, and it has not had as much traction as it should. And one of the significant ways it can begin to have more traction is we now are, as opposed to 20 years ago, we have a lot more peer specialists, people with lived experience available to talk with, meet with, and support people at all different points of the system. Out in the community, in the hospitals, in the emergency wards. And this is where we as the peer support workforce and movement can begin to engage very differently than what was available over 20 years ago. And that is that we can begin to talk like we are today about our own experiences, why this is helpful, and offering support. Peers are critical for outreach on a number of health education fronts because there is a level of trust, communication, and credibility that has been established that just isn't there when you're not making that connection on shared experience. Peer supporters can give illustrations through our personal stories and examples, which means that we can support people to think about what this could look like for them, and it's not interpreted as giving advice, right? This is what, if we stick to what we learn and know is in peer support, which is we give our personal examples of what's working, not telling people what they should do, right? Peer supporters can create greater connection, and peer supporters authentically come from the community and can provide cultural competency if we are identifying the peer workforce of peers who are coming from those local communities in which they serve. So because of time, I'm not going to delve too deeply into this, but I wanted to underscore that there are a number of claims and theories and research that really have backed the value of peer health education initiatives. And some of this is broad-based, right? Some of this research comes from HIV infection initiatives, where they found that more than clinical interventions, the most effective way in which they reduced HIV infection was using peers to go out and do peer-to-peer education around how to manage HIV infection, etc. So it's not even just in the mental health field, but in a number of fronts when peers who are coming from those communities are providing the health education about these things. They have greater outreach capability. They can provide a role modeling, which increases the engagement, an acceptability to what information is being provided to them, a credibility in what they're talking about because they're living it, and they model that the health education that they're providing is empowering, right? That it's about your gaining the information and doing this for yourself. There's also a naturalism that's referred to in the literature, and that is that there is a natural channel of information that's being passed amongst peer communities already. And utilizing trained peer educators, you're tapping into that natural network of information sharing and getting the right information into that network. There's also an efficacy there, right? So more successful than traditional educational providers passing on information. The research really shows that when peers are passing that information on, they're far more effective in getting that information out and getting people to engage with that information. So someone asked a question about, like, how do we really get this to stick in our agencies? I might support somebody with it, but then how does it get used? So here at the Copeland Center, we have a very simple model, which is, just to make it rememberable here, it's called ASAR. We want to ask. So at all parts of the system, if you're at an agency, adopt a policy that every point of contact in that agency, at intake or throughout, asks, do you have one? Would you like one? Then support the person. If they have one, say, can we have a copy? We'd like to make sure in the event that this gets triggered, we can make sure it gets to the right people, right? If they don't have one, can we refer you to a peer group that is doing education on this? Or would you like to sit down and talk about it? The next part is there needs to be a policy that says when a person goes into crisis, we have a procedure to advocate for that. Somebody calls and finds out. Did the directive get there? Was the agent informed? Then we also need to revise afterwards. How did it go? Did the document work? Do we need to update it, right? If we've asked and the person says no, revise is a policy that says 30, 60, 90 days at the agency will ask again. Hey, when you first came in, you said you weren't interested. We just want to check back and see if you're interested now. A great place to put this into effect is to make sure patient rights advocates have the information. If you're supporting someone or for yourself, find out who the patient rights advocates are, let them know you have one, maybe provide them a copy. They're gonna love to have this. This is what they wanna do. They wanna make sure your voice and choice is heard. Colleen, any ideas for how to help people in developing these?
Yeah, one of the agencies, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, developed a website called the Conversation Project, and they're mostly focused on physical healthcare because people don't have physical healthcare advanced directives. It's uncomfortable, something people avoid doing. So what I did is they have what they call the Talk About It starter kit. So what I did is I tweaked that kit for psychiatric advanced directives. So it goes from reasons to consider, how do you prepare, what matters to me, what's important to me, what Matt was talking about, you gotta have a reason behind it. And then what focus do you want your healthcare to have? I want all my symptoms eliminated, or I can handle some symptoms. I want my quality of life. That's just one example. I'm not going to go through them all because of time. Again, this document can be obtained. I just found out today that is legal. And so you go through all this stuff and you get to know, what do you want to say to your family or the person that you want to talk to about becoming your agent? You've got it all figured out in your head before you begin the conversation. And it even says, do you want to have it at Thanksgiving dinner, or do you want to invite, the one person you want out and talk about it. And then once you figure it out, present it to the rest of the family so that they know what's going on. So it's got a lot of great suggestions in here. So contact NIAPers. Or Matt, you will probably have it too. Somebody wanted it.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, that will be a very, very helpful guide to take a look at. As Colleen said, even for yourself, just if you're developing this on your own, it's a good document to really guide you through some of the things you want to think about. So again, ASAR, we kind of covered this a little bit, but this is what we can do at a systems level. Agencies could adopt these policies of ASAR: ask, support, advocate, and revise. Very important to revise because things can change in your life as well. It's also important, like in New York, for example, that your document, when you put it together, is pretty much good until you revoke it. But that doesn't mean if you did one and it's 10 years later, it might be a good idea to revise it because things, again, could change. I know my body's changing, so there are things that I would put in there that that affect me now that didn't affect me just 5 years ago, just due to life changing. So some helpful critical extras to really provide. Again, there's no right or wrong way to put these together. There's lots of forms out there you can use or adopt. But one of the things that a lot of them are missing is you could find yourself in a psychiatric facility and you've outlined a lot of different things, but there might be some really good tips that when you're in there or even in the community that can de-escalate a crisis. And also letting people know things that make it worse, right? It can be really valuable for a lot of younger professionals who don't come from the cultures that they might be serving, older people from a different culture. It can be really helpful to know that if you address that person as ma'am or sir, that it could really go a long way in that relationship, particularly when things are heated, right? Not pointing at people. These might be things that we just naturally do, right? In a situation, or people may do with us, but they could really escalate a situation for us that if we only let them know, please, instead of restraining me, restrain yourself from pointing at me and raising your voice and not addressing me as the senior that I may be to you, right? Little things like that can go a long way in improving everyone's safety and quality of care and dignity during these very difficult times. Other things that are really important are, again, who's going to pay the rent, the bills, take care of my pets, plants, mail. But I want to emphasize here a really important thing. I have seen it in supporting people where they go into psychiatric hospitals, come out, and while they were in the hospital, they didn't keep up with their probation or their fines, and no one communicated or coordinated that. And as soon as they got out of the psychiatric hospital, they got picked up by the police for violation of probation or not paying their fines and went into the jail. As soon as they came out of the jail, they went back into the psychiatric facility because that was not a good experience for them as well. And the cycle continues. So this is also a great place to indicate things. I have seen people whose whole careers were thrown off track and now they have huge employment gaps because they went into a psychiatric facility. And unlike if I got into a car accident, and I was in a hospital, someone would have notified my employer, and under FMLA, my job would have been secured. But there are thousands of people who, because of psychiatric care, lost their jobs and weren't able to keep their jobs when they were legally entitled to keep them while they were getting medical treatment. So these are also really important things to build in there. Who's going to contact my employer and know what to say and not to say to my employer? Like, I am not at work, so-and-so is not at work because they're getting medical treatment right now, and we'll keep you apprised of when they're out. Colleen, anything you wanted to add to that point? We've come to the conclusion here, just holding up the resource page for a minute.
I just have like 30 seconds, but just things that I worked on a psychiatric intervention committee for many years, and staff safety as well as patient safety is really important. So I put that in there. I want to keep everyone safe. Don't gang up on me. Always offer me a way out if there's a situation brewing, and just talk to me respectfully. Remind me what outcome do you expect from this? Say it in a nice way, and don't surround me and threaten, because that's just gonna trigger everything, and then I don't want anybody to get hurt, right? I want to get hurt. I want you to get hurt. So when you show that you care for others, that gives them permission to maybe give you a little more leeway. All right, on that note, I'm going to end and hand it over to Larry.
Well, so thank you so much, guys. This was incredible. We're gonna bring you some questions in a moment. I just want to let everybody know. I know a lot of people ask, like, how do we make sure the documents get used and all? I do want to point out. So we have a card we're going to include on the website along with the recording of this presentation and along with Colleen's document. There's a card we recommend that people who have an advanced directive keep with their insurance card, clip it to it. It gives information where your documents can be found, who to contact if you have an agent. We recommend it's with your insurance card. We all know even if you hide your insurance card in your sock, in your shoe, if you get hospitalized, they will find your insurance card. We also know that once they find your insurance card, they won't look for anything else. So you want to make sure that when they find the insurance card, they're going to find that valuable information. So that card will be on our website. I just want to remind everyone in New York State, any OMH licensed or funded organization can get a lot more training on this free of charge from the NIAPRIS Learning Collective.
Larry, you went on mute.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that. I'm putting up my email address. Thank you. I should never be muted. So that you can, with that email, if you want free training from NIAPRIS and you are New York State OMH licensed or funded, you can have free training in psychiatric advanced directives and 40 other topics, trauma-informed care, de-escalation. If you are out of New York State, we can do it for you very affordably. It used to be less affordable because we had to get to you, but now we're online. Matt and Colleen will have contact information either in the presentation or on our website when we post the presentation if you want to reach them. So again, I want to thank you for everything you did, and I want to get you some questions here.
Just share, and it's kind of related to some questions that may come up, but one of the resources is, and you can contact us at info@doorstowellbeing.org. But one of the things that we have been doing through the Copeland Center is a peer facilitated group model where we co-facilitate an exploration of all the things you want to consider to put in your plan. Because as it was kind of said in the chat box by, I believe, Yvonne, this is not something you just go put together right away. It takes a lot of thought and reflection, and the best environments to really be thinking about what your needs may be and your action plans can be is in a peer group environment. And this is something that we have been offering, and we may be offering in collaboration with NIAPRIS as well. Right now, we provide those opportunities at no cost through our SAMHSA grant. It's an environment for people to come together and really explore and share ideas like we did today, because it takes time to think about this. And with this support, then individuals can go and create their own documents and then get the legal support they need to finalize that document.
Thank you very much. And we also, please, I know that Daniela put in about the e-news. We will be doing more psychiatric advanced directive events. We're going to hold a forum this summer. NIAPRIS wants more people using advanced directives, and we're going to do everything we can to help make that so. So with all of that, we'll finish up with some questions. Somebody asked, how do I know I don't need my crisis plan anymore? So that was relating, I believe, Matt, when you talked about RAP and the intersection, if you want to address that.
So I guess what I would say about that is in RAP, we can develop crisis plans that are very holistic, right? That they're just like in RAP. RAP is progressive. We do early warning signs and action plans. We do when things are breaking down in action plans. Then we have a crisis plan. Beyond the crisis plan is the PAD, right? This is now the stage where it's not just I'm in crisis and I'm trying to navigate this with my supporters in my life. This is I'm considered to be incompetent. I'm in the hospital and people aren't consoling or talking to me anymore. That's the PAD level, right? When we are deemed in that category, we need a psychiatric advance directive, not just our crisis plan or our RAP. That's where it kind of, our RAP ends and the psychiatric advance directive begins. And then our post-crisis kicks in when that has passed and we're back into our life and we're back into our RAP. So hopefully that gives you kind of the cycle picture.
Thank you, Matt. I think we have one more minute left. Let me see. Oh, so somebody, if you want to just, somebody wrote medical reasons trump
Oh.
rights in a lot of cases. So if anyone want to quickly weigh in on why it's important to have an advanced directive, even though, yes, it won't always be able to be, taken into 100% account, but why it's still important even when there may be a conflict there.
I was gonna add that psychiatric advanced directives are still, well, the last I know of, they were still looking for the neighborhood legal services of your area, your public legal services are looking for cases in order to set some precedent. So if you have an issue or your psychiatric advanced directive is not followed or not seen, you can bring it to them and they will mediate that increased effectiveness and increased use by facilities. And you wanted to know what, Larry?
Well, they were asking about, so we're actually running out of time. They were asking about when like under emergencies or legal issues. So this, I want to say this was wonderful. This is a webinar to get people thinking about PAD, getting them to use it, knowing about how peer supports are helping a lot of people get their PADs done, and knowing a bit about how RAP and PAD can intersect and be used together. You guys, there's a lot more nuts and bolts to getting them done. The NRC can tell you about various states. NIAPRIS can tell you all about New York for free. So we really, this is just the beginning. As I said, we'll be having other webinars, and we do ask you guys to, if you're in New York, you can have free training. If you're OMH licensed or funded, please get more work on PAD. We want everyone doing PAD. Please reach out if you need free training, because we really want PADs getting done. So with that, I want to thank you guys for everything. Thank you for your time. Thank you for introducing us, Daniela, and thank you all, and be safe, be well, and look out for future webinars from us and for everything we post on our website from this webinar in just a few days. And remember, CEUs, you will get an evaluation link within 24 hours. You will have 48 hours to get that back to us for your CEUs. Thank you so much, everybody.